So I hope you are all ready to take in a lot of information that I am now going to share with you all. So first, I would like to start with my own introduction. I'm Ritu Kabra, and I got into alternate healing or complementary healing in the year 2005. It started just out of curiosity with hypnotherapy. I moved back from Africa to India, and I was just looking for something to do. And hypnotherapy was just very fascinating. The very term itself in 2005 was pretty uncommon in India. Today, it's a very common term, and people are very aware of hypnotherapy as a tool for healing, whereas family constellation is there's not so much awareness. So I joined hypnotherapy out of sheer curiosity, and that was the beginning of my journey in 2005. I didn't know that I had so much trauma in my own space. I just knew that I'm hypersensitive. And that's a term really going around on Instagram now, HSP, hypersensitive person. And I realized that I was that person, hypersensitive. I took everything personally, and anything could make me feel bad, make me, lose my cool or sulk or whatever. So, of course, hypnotherapy was a beautiful journey. And from there, I did TASO, I did NLP, I did inner child work, I did theta healing, and many other such modalities. And all of these modalities helped me. They helped me tremendously. It was a beautiful journey. I worked on a lot of my inner children, and I started seeing a lot of changes in myself. So things I didn't know affecting me from childhood. I didn't even know I had trauma in my childhood, which I think is the case with most people. Even people who come for therapy, they always have a question, why is this happening with me? But they don't even know that their upbringing was traumatic, because everything that we experienced as children was normal for us. We took it as normal. This is life. This is how it is. And we always thought that our childhood was full of love. So did I, that I had a beautiful childhood. I couldn't specifically tell you what it was, but my impression was that it was beautiful. It's only when I started my journey, things started coming out, which made me realize that I'd grown up in a sort of a dysfunctional family, as I think most of us are. And there is no blame or judgment of my parents. That's just how it was. Anyway, so at a point about 7 years back, I think I got introduced to family constellation. And honestly, I was like, what more can I learn now? I already know so much. I'm doing such great work with my clients, and I don't think that there's anything more that can be added to my toolkit and my repertoire of knowledge that I already have. But on the insistence of someone, I set up a constellation. I allowed them to set up a constellation for me. And I don't think I have been so awestruck by any form of therapy as I was with constellation work. The power of the field, the information which comes out from the field, all of that was completely mind-blowing. And I think it was the beginning of a journey which there is no looking back from for me. So ever since then I decided to learn about constellations, and it is the only modality I'm now practicing. That is not to discount the importance of the other modalities and how much they can help us in our healing journey. So I have a lot of respect for all the other things that I've done, that I've learned, and that I've used with my clients. But somehow with constellations, what was very important for me was it answered for me the question why or how. So I would always wonder. So when we work with other modalities, we do a lot of inner child work. We go back to traumas in childhood. Maybe if there was violence, there was sexual abuse, things like that. We go back, we heal the children. We heal the inner child. We integrate it back. But I always wondered, why would a mother be violent? Why would a father be sexually abusive to his own daughter? Why would brothers be so disconnected from their sister? It was something that always was in my mind. It was somewhere at the back that why? Why does it have to be like this? And it didn't make sense somehow to me. um, with constellation, that why got answered for me. Because constellation looks not just at the individual. I'm not only looking at Ritu as a person and her experiences from childhood, which are also, of course, very important, and we always look at that. But I'm also looking at the system to which she belongs. So, what is the system to which I belong? And what is the effect of that system on this individual? And that was very, very important for me to really come to a place where I found answers which finally brought me to an understanding and to a sense of peace with some of the most important people in our family, like our parents, especially our mother. So I think a lot of us have a lot of grouse with our mothers because, of course, she's the first person in our life. She's the most important person in our life. And somehow a lot of our issues go back to her attitude towards us and how she brought us up. And it answered a lot of questions about my relationship with my mother, about why she was the way she was. And it's today I'm in a beautiful place with her. That's not to say that I don't still have issues with her. And but I can say that I'm very far away from where I used to be, and I'm very much towards where I would like to be. So, yeah. So that's why constellation work was something that was um, that really drew me to it. And I recently organized a seminar for constellation, and I think it was the first from the Indian subcontinent. We had a very good 3-day seminar. We had people from all over participating as who shared their knowledge, and it was a great success. So it's really encouraging to see that even on the Indian subcontinent, this work is growing. So one thing about constellations is constellation work is solution oriented. So what's important about that? In constellation, we don't look for blame. We don't look for, we don't judge people as good, bad, right, wrong. We accept things exactly as they are. So if there was incest in the family, if there was rape, if there was violence, if there was anything else, if somebody aborted a child, if they gave away a child, whatever it is, we don't judge that act or that behavior as good or bad, right or wrong. We only look at what it is, how is it affecting the person, and what is the solution. So it is a very solution oriented approach. In other therapies, there's a lot of venting of anger. I'm making a little comparison because I see a lot of you all must be therapists using other modalities. So I'm just making a little bit of a comparison without judgment so that you can just see how it is a little different. So, for example, in hypnodrama, we do a lot of venting of anger. And I have myself made my clients do it. And it has gotten me beautiful results when I was practicing it. But I love that in Constellation, we don't vent our anger, we don't abuse, we don't say horrible things, but we still express what we feel. But everything comes from a place of love. So, in Constellation, one question we ask is where was the love lost? Where did the flow of love stop? Or where is it that love could not be expressed in the system? And that unexpressed love can come later in the system in many different forms. So, somebody in a future generation may express it in a very unacceptable form, but it is still the expression of love which was not expressed previously. So that's one thing. We are always looking for where was the love lost? Where could love not be expressed in the system? So the work was first developed by Bert Hellinger. Bert Hellinger, who's a German guy, he passed away in September 2019. And he developed the work and the whole theory. So, as with other forms of therapy, a behavior was observed, a theory was developed, then it was tested, and then there was a hypothesis, or, it was put forward as something that can be utilized to work with the person. With constellation, the whole theory has come out of the practice. So it's not like there was first a hypothesis which was tested in a setting. As Bert Hellinger started working with people, he developed the work as he moved along. And for many, many years, as he continued to practice, there was no theory actually available, because he really didn't want to put anything down and say, this is what it is, because each person is so different and each system is so different. It was only when his students insisted that he needs to put it down so that others can learn from his experiences, then he started writing about it. So the whole theory comes out of the practice. Everything has been extracted from the practice. So it has been seen in hundreds and hundreds of constellations before it has been put down as something which can be used as a theory, sort of, but still it is not a prescription. Okay, so that's what is unique about constellation, is that the entire theory has come out of the practice. So let's first look at, so constellation, when we say family constellation, it's also called systemic work. So it's called systemic work because we deal with not only the person, but we deal with the entire system to which the person belongs. And each one of us belongs to a system. Even if you have been given away as a child, even if you've never met your parents or your grandparents, even if you lost your parents within a few months of your birth and you never met them, and you feel like you have no one in this world, you still belong to a system. The system into which you were born will always be your system to which you will belong. And even people who died don't lose their belonging. So the belonging to the system is even beyond death. You always belong to your system. So even if I'm 60, 70, 80, 90, I will always be my parents' daughter. I'll always be my grandparents' granddaughter. So my identity will always be with my system. And nothing in this world can change that. Even if I disown them, I move away from them and never connect with them, I will still be connected to my system. Okay, so this is systemic work. So it works with what is it that you're carrying from your system that is affecting your life. So of course, there were experiences you had in childhood, which we can call traumatic experiences. And we have traumatic experiences even now as adults. But our responses are also a lot to do with what we are carrying from our system. So Bert Hellinger, with his experience in the field, developed what he called the three consciences, or the survival mechanisms. So I'm going to screen share a little bit with you all. And okay. So I hope all of you all can see the screen. If you can, please unmute and just tell me yes. So I know that you all can all see the screen. Just one person can unmute and say yes. So I know.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Great.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, with the hundreds of constellations Hellinger did, and as I told you, the theory came out of the practice. So he developed this theory that basically the system is looking for its own survival. And these three consciences can also be called the survival mechanisms of the system. So at the most basic level is what we have is what is called the unit conscience or the personal conscience. Okay, so the unit conscience is interested in the survival of the individual or of the unit. So what do I mean by unit? So the unit means our family system, for example, or the group we belong to. And of course, we belong to many, many groups. So on the one hand, our most important group and our first group that we belong to is our family. But we also belong to many other groups. We belong to religious groups, social groups. We belong to various organizations, professional groups. So there are many groups we belong to. But the most important group that we belong to is our family group, to our family. So to our family system. So this, the first conscience speaks about the survival of the unit, the survival of the individual in the unit. Now, over here is where, and this mechanism is very conscious. That means we are very aware of certain rules of belonging to this system. We are very aware of the rules of belonging. So we know that in order to belong to our system, there is certain behavior that is expected of us. There are certain do's and don'ts that ensure our belonging to our system. So, in this level, at the level of the unit, at the level of the family, so let's just call it a family. Okay. So, at the level of the family, we have judgment, we have ideals, we have judgments of good, bad, right, wrong, things that I can do and things that I cannot do, things which are acceptable and those things which are not acceptable. And that is something that we carry within us. It is something which actually influences our behavior. It influences how we accept other members of the family or not. It also influences how we look at people who are outside of our family. How do we judge them as good, bad, right, wrong? So, this is about our belonging to our most basic system, which is our family. So, at this level, there are three things which we spoke about, which are very, very important. So, the first and the most important. So, what is it that ensures our belonging to our family, to our system, to our unit? Is if we do what is expected of us, if we follow the norms, if we adhere to the spoken and unspoken, to the implicit and the explicit rules of our system. So then our belonging to our system is ensured. When we do something which, in a way, makes us feel guilty, how do we know that we are doing something which is not acceptable by our unit, by our system, by our family? Is you have a sense of guilt. So, whenever you have a sense of guilt about a behavior, about an act, then you know that it is something that is not acceptable to my unit, to my family, to my system. So, the guilt in us, which makes us feel insecure, is what is actually the conscience that we are speaking about over here. We have a guilty conscience. And when we exactly do what is expected of us, then we have a clear conscience. We feel good about ourselves. We feel secure in our belonging. Then there is so what are the things that affect our belonging? So, what could be some of the things that affect our belonging to the system? I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment so I can see you all. So, some of the things that can affect our belonging could be, I'm going to give you a few examples and then you all can share a few examples. So, for example, if it's, say, a family of doctors and one child wants to maybe get into finance and is not interested in pursuing the family vocation, the family profession, and they all take pride in being a family of doctors, then that person feels guilty about doing something which his family does not agree to, which his family looks down upon, looks at as not good enough, and then there is guilt. So even though this person may go ahead and still follow his heart and go into finance, there will always be a sense of guilt that he disappointed his family or went against what is considered the family norms, right? So can you all give me some examples like this, just one or two, so I know that you've understood what I'm talking about.
A child doing better than the parent
A child who is
professionally.
better than the parent professionally. Okay, okay. Yeah, that would also be a little bit more about loyalty. Yeah, what else? What else could it be that
Choosing a different path or a career than what was expected.
a different path or a career, or you could be marrying someone who your parents disapprove of, especially if it is someone who belongs to a group which is considered to be an enemy group, or considered to be a group which we look down upon, or a group that we don't communicate with, and then you decide to marry someone from that group. That could be a way that you lose your belonging, right? What else? There are other ways. Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Tamar, you were saying something. Please go ahead.
There was somebody else talking. I thought so. I silenced. No, like for example, moving out of the house without being married in certain countries is in certain families is not accepted as well. For example.
Correct. So you lose your belonging in that way,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, and then, so these are the ways that we lose our belonging. So anything that makes you feel when our religious beliefs are different, example, I'm spiritual and they aren't and don't relate to it. Yes. So anything that makes you feel a sense of guilt, even though you do it, but you still question, how will my family look at it? Will it be accepted? How will I live with this? You may still do it. You marry someone outside, someone you fall in love with. Your family completely doesn't agree with it, but your love is so strong that you go for it. But you carry that bit of a guilt, right? Because somewhere your belonging has been affected. So that is one way of losing your belonging. Another way that we lose our belonging is when we are not given our own place. So, for example, when a child is given away as soon as he is born, or if children are aborted and they are not given a place, or they are forgotten about, or if somebody dies young, or someone commits suicide and the family doesn't want to talk about it because it's very shameful. So you may lose belonging in that way. Someone gets institutionalized and the family finds it very shameful and they don't want to talk about it. So the future generations don't even know. So that person has lost their belonging. Or someone dies of an illness, which is considered to be sort of shameful, for example, AIDS, where people still look at it as something very shameful that someone has AIDS. So something like that. And that way you could lose your belonging. So infant deaths, someone went to war and died over there and was forgotten, or the early death of a parent, and no one talks about that parent. So that way the person can lose their belonging. So these are some ways that one can lose their belonging, either because they have not been given a place or because of something they themselves have done, because of which they are not accepted, or they feel guilty and they feel like they no longer have a right to belong to the system. So this sense of belonging is a very felt sense. It's something that you feel within you. It's a very felt sense. It's something that you cannot really put it in words. So you could be living in a family and you still may not feel belonged. For example, in certain cultures, like in my culture, daughters are maybe looked on as, we would rather have sons than daughters. So if there are 2, 3 daughters in a family, normally the second or the third daughter feels a sense of I'm not wanted because we are too many girls. So it's a very felt sense that you feel. Okay. So, and this is something that you carry within you. So guys, if you'll put something in the chat, I'm not going to read it in the middle because it breaks my train of thought. So as I read the chat, it just breaks off what I'm going to say and I forget what I'm going to say next. So please excuse me. I will not read the chat now, but I will read everything later. Yeah. So this is a very felt sense and it happens at the level of the unit or the system or the group. Okay, so at a very individual level and our sense of belonging, most importantly to our family. Okay, now what other ways can you lose your belonging? You can lose your belonging if, for example, or somebody else can lose their belonging. Yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
For example, if you have a different sexual orientation or a different political view.
Absolutely.
This kind of things.
Yes, a different sexual orientation can definitely lead to you losing your belonging. You have a different political view, you can lose your belonging. Also, when we do not, so one of the things is belonging. Then within the unit mechanism, within the unit, the other things which are important for the unit, and I'm going to share screen again, is the order. So what do I mean by order? So in family systems, there can be disturbances or there can be issues if people are not in their correct place. So every person in a system has one rightful place which they belong to or which belongs to them. And that place is only theirs and nobody else can take it. But sometimes if we feel unacknowledged or we feel not seen or we feel not important enough, in order to assert our importance, we may take a place which does not belong to us. So a simple example would be a woman or a man who is the second partner, who is the second wife or the second partner in the relationship. Maybe the first one, maybe they've had a divorce or has died early or whatever, but is no longer connected. But this person is a second in the relationship, but wants to behave as if they are first. So I do not want to acknowledge that I came second, that there was someone else before me, and there is a place for that person. So that is one thing that can also affect the peace of the unit conscience, which can affect the family system, is not being in the correct order or not accepting your own place. So if you are a second partner to your spouse, you have to acknowledge that there was someone before me and I am only the second. Also, when it comes to, for example, children, and if there are many children in a system, there are maybe 5, 6, 7 children, sometimes the youngest child feels not seen. And studies have shown that a mother is capable of taking care of a maximum of 6 children. Any child born after that, it's beyond her capacity to really take care of that child. And that child may feel unseen. And then that child may leave his own place as the 6th or the 7th and try to behave like he's the oldest. taking the place of the eldest. So taking that position, trying to be in a place which is not their own. This is a burden for the child, as well as it is difficult for the person whose place they are trying to take. So there could be a kind of a tug of war or a disturbance, because there becomes a competition, there becomes sibling rivalry, and each one is trying to assert their importance. Yeah, so that is one more way that we lose our place. Also, in a system, there is also a hierarchy. So in the hierarchy, people who came first have a greater belonging than those who came later. So the grandparents, then children. Very often, children, when they start doing well in life, in a way start, and again, nothing is a judgment, guys. This is just reality as it happens. So we are not judging people who behave in this way, because there is an inner drive for them to do this. So very often children try to replace a parent, so they may feel themselves bigger than their parents, maybe because they are doing better financially, they have achieved more, they have come out of the poverty in which their parents lived, and so they may tend to look down on their parents, consider themselves better. They may belong to a minority group, and they may start looking down on their own group and feel themselves to be better because now they are doing better, they moved up in society. So in all of these ways, we sort of lose or we create a disturbance in the balance of the system. So keeping your own place, your own, keeping the order in the system is very important for the peace and harmony or balance in the system. So that's one more thing, how you can lose your belonging to the system. And the third, should I say, law or order is of exchange. So there is a certain balance of giving and receiving, which is important for people to feel, again, a sense of not guilt, a sense of ease, a sense of security. So when someone gives us something, we would like to give back so that we don't feel obliged, we don't feel pressured, we don't feel small because we are just receiving. So this balance is very important of exchange. So also if someone takes too much, so say in somebody takes something which does not belong to them. So say one child takes all the inheritance and does not allow the siblings to get it. So there is an imbalance of giving and receiving. Or if, again, order and exchange could be entangled. So if the younger child feels very big, is earning more than the older brother and starts taking responsibility for everything and starts behaving like the older one, including taking responsibility for the older one and his family, there is an imbalance of exchange and order. So all of these three things are sort of entangled in each other. So all the three things could be present in any one situation. So would anybody like to share something about either order or exchange? So I know that you all sort of have an idea of what I'm talking about, and that any other examples where there may be an imbalance of order or of exchange, where someone either gives too much and doesn't receive enough, or someone receives too much and does not give enough. Maybe unfair inheritance, or taking something which does not really belong to you by unfair means, or taking a place which does not belong to you.
In a marriage also, it's a very common thing to happen. One spouse giving more than the other.
Yes, in a marriage, it's very common that one spouse gives more than the other. And that could create an imbalance. So the man could feel that, oh, I'm earning, I'm doing everything. What are you doing? And this is very common in couples, that if a man feels that, oh, I'm earning, I'm out full day, I'm working very hard, and I see you that you are doing nothing, you're just lazing in the house, you're watching TV, you're shopping, you're enjoying yourself. So that would create a sense of imbalance and again create disturbance in the unit. What else?
In a family where there are more children, 5, 6 children, all treated differently, at different levels. Like the second child is more responsible. The third child is not allowed to do work because the second child is little dominating, something like that. There are also a lot of problems that with the child for the lifetime, child feels abandoned by many things, by parents, by sisters, brothers.
Correct.
Is that also part?
Yes, of course, of course. When you're in a family of many children, or depending on the sex of the child, very often the child is rejected and may feel a need to establish their belonging by doing things which are not okay depending on where they are in the order. They may try to behave bigger, they may try to get more importance because they want to assert their place in the system. So all of these things create disturbance at the level of the unit. But these are all basically survival mechanisms. So the belonging is the most important, and all of these things are basically ways of people trying to belong to the system. Okay, so this is the level where people, so the unit conscience in a way protects your belonging to your system. If you do what is expected, if you follow the norms, if you adhere to the implicit and the explicit rules of belonging. But when you do anything that is different, that is unacceptable, then you lose your belonging. And this losing of your belonging is what creates entanglements in the family system. So this losing of your belonging is what creates issues in the system. So I have an example written down here, which I thought I'd share, but I can't seem to find it right now.
Ritu, one very important thing is a baby not being born due to abortion or miscarriage or whatever, and that child not being given due importance in the family.
Correct.
They are forgotten or
Yes.
not mentioned.
Right. So what happens is the order gets disturbed when there is an abortion. Right? So when there is an abortion, the child, say if he was the firstborn child, and for whatever reason the parents had to abort, the child who is born after is actually the second-born, but is considered as the firstborn. The placement, the position, the responsibilities, and the feel of that place of the firstborn is very different from the feel of the second-born. And each one of us who has who's not the only child but has siblings, knows this, that wherever you are in the system, if you are the firstborn, if you are the second-born or the third-born, how you feel and your place in the system is very different from that of your older or your younger sibling. So that also creates an entanglement with the fate of the older sibling who was aborted. Okay. So when people are excluded, not allowed to belong because of all these things, because either they have done something which is unacceptable to the unit, that is what creates entanglements. And how do these entanglements get created? So the unit conscience is only interested in the survival of the unit, of the system, of the family. So it creates boundaries around the family, around the system, around the unit. And everybody else who's outside are looked on as others. So this is where the othering happens. This is us, these are the others, because they are different from us. And you can put this in a larger context, whether it is the context of nations or countries or cities or religions or communities, whatever. Okay. So starting from the bigger to the smaller system, there is an othering. So those who don't belong, who are not like us, they are the others. And within our system, those who behave differently also get excluded. We can't accept them because our unit cannot survive if everyone starts behaving as they want. It can disturb the survival of the unit. So they are excluded. But there is a larger system, a larger conscience, which is subconscious. So the unit conscience is more conscious. We are aware. We have a felt sense of it. We know when we are doing something, whether it's good, bad, right, or wrong. Right? So to give you a very simple example, yesterday, day before yesterday, on Sunday, I went for a trek, and it was on the top of a mountain. And on the top of a mountain, there was this very old temple, very tiny little temple. It was like carved into the a rock. And I really wanted to enter the temple because it looked very old, seemed to have a very beautiful energy. But I was wearing my shoes. And we never enter the temple with shoes. Whereas if it's a church, we can easily enter the church with our shoes on. So there was nobody else around. It was only me and my husband, but I couldn't get myself to enter into the temple with my shoes on. And I was too lazy to remove my shoes. It was a big job. So I just prayed from outside and I left. But I realized I was very conscious of the sense of I cannot do this, even though no one is watching, even though no one is around. Something in me just wouldn't let me take that little step in and say, okay, let me go inside the temple and pray. So I could only do it from outside and leave. And if I had done it, I would have carried the guilt in me that I did something which is not acceptable. So that's the guilt. And I'm sure we all have stuff like that. Yeah. So then bigger than the unit conscience is the system conscience. Not the system conscience is bigger because it is interested in the survival of the system, not only of the individual unit. So this is a very subconscious thing. The system conscience affects us at a subconscious level. We are not aware of its effect on us, but we see its effect in our life in the form of patterns or entanglements with people from the previous generation. So the system conscience is interested in the completeness of the system. Everybody who belongs to the system, it wants to bring them back and give them their rightful place. So whether it was abortions, or whether it was early death, or whether it was suicide, or if it was somebody who was disowned from inheritance, somebody who married outside and was separated from the family, whatever it may be, the system conscience is only interested in the survival of the entire system, of that particular group. It's also only referring to that group. So it is not global. It also has its limitations. So it is interested in bringing back everybody who has been excluded, whether physically excluded or even excluded from the heart. So exclusion can also happen from the heart. So I may be meeting somebody who is a member of my family, maybe almost daily, but I still can't give them a place in my heart because they have done something which is not agreeable to the family system or to the unit. So belonging is not something which is only physical, but it's also a belonging to the heart. It's a felt sense. So the system conscience wants to bring back everybody. And this is where you see patterns. So how do patterns form? What are patterns? So patterns basically remind us of something that happened in the previous generation, which has been unhealed or unresolved, or an emotion or a trauma which has not been assimilated or digested by the system. So I'll share one client example here. So my client came to me because she's a very successful in her business. She has a design company, and every time she went to her office, to her work, she felt a lot of stress. She said, even though I love my work, I enjoy what I do, I'm doing what I love, Still, the minute I enter my office space, I experience so much stress. It is abnormal. And I don't understand where the stress is coming from. And because of my stress, my husband is telling me, please stop this work because it is affecting my health. It's affecting my relationship with my husband because now he started to interfere. He wants to come and help me and handle the business, and he has started to take over the finances of my business. And for the first time, me and my husband are having an issue in our relationship because he has started coming to my work, started interfering in my work and taking over the finances of my work. So she wanted to, on the one hand, work with her relationship, but she wanted to understand why is my business causing me so much stress, even though it's something I love. Okay, and without really getting into the details of the steps, the connection that we found was that her grandmother was secretly doing, she was selling pickles. Okay, and first she was giving them free and then she started selling them, but she was doing it secretly because the grandfather was completely against women working. So that work for the grandmother was extremely stressful because she had to do it very secretly. Nobody in the family knew about it. And only when they did find out, the grandfather was very angry. He slapped the grandmother for doing that. So the stress that she was carrying was the unresolved, undigested stress of the grandmother. And every time she went to work, she literally carried that stress, which was unhealed in the system. The grandfather, because the grandmother's business was so successful, took over the business and started handling the finance. Exactly like it happened in her life, where her husband took over the finances. And of course, the business spoiled the relationship between the grandfather and the grandmother because she was doing this secretly behind his back. And during those times, women were not supposed to work. So it was almost like an ego issue for the men that my wife wants to earn money as if I'm not capable enough. It was looked down upon. So my client was in a field which was completely male dominated. She's in the field of architecture, fully male dominated field. So it was almost like the pattern of the life of a grandmother was repeating as a pattern in her life. Okay, so that is how patterns form in the system. This is just one example. Of course, there are many, many such examples where we are carrying what is unhealed and unresolved in the previous generations into our own life stories. And that is what it answers. Like I told you all in the beginning, the question why. It answers the why. Why do I feel stressed about a work which I love? Why do I feel stressed the minute I step into my office? I love doing this work and I'm successful. Still, it gives me stress. So it answers the why. And it gives you, it connects it back to something that happened in the system which was not resolved. So this is where patterns are formed. The outsourcing that you can see over here is, of course, that very often the emotion, what is unhealed, unresolved, unacknowledged is in a way gets outsourced to someone in the future generation who then has to, who carries that and it affects their life. So I'd like to share another example here is I was working with addiction and what happened was, so in this family, this boy was addicted and he was a very intelligent guy, very capable, had achieved a lot in at a very young age, was very good at playing cricket and had also played at a level of the state and things like that. So this addiction of his, so, I want to explain it in a way that it makes sense. So let's say that when I worked with him and his addiction, so addiction is actually a movement towards death. People who are addicted are obviously slowly moving towards death. So it's a movement away from life, so to speak, right? And in this system of, in fact, in his system on both sides of the family, there were many suicides which were, so when the mother was expecting this boy, she discovered that her husband was having an extramarital affair. Okay. And that trauma of the mother at the discovery. So I think as soon as he was born, she realized that the husband had another woman in his life. He was having an extramarital affair, and he was very serious about this other relationship. And this trauma was literally outsourced to the child. So this child carried this trauma of the mother, and she could not really express it to her husband because she also had the insecurity that that he might leave her and go to the other woman. So she also had that insecurity. So she suppressed the trauma which the child carried. And maybe she felt that her life was, as good as if I'm dead because my husband is involved with another woman. My life is over. I have nothing to look forward to in life. Obviously, she could not connect to her child emotionally. And this child carried this trauma of the mother. And in his early teens, early adolescent years, he went towards drug addiction in a way to handle that trauma that actually did not belong to him. So in a way, this trauma got outsourced to him. He carried it for his mother. Okay, so we also, the unexpressed, unassimilated trauma of the system gets carried by the future generations and affects how they live their life. It affects the decisions they make in their life. And they don't feel free to make the decisions because the trauma is so much that even though a part of me understands that I want to do other things, I'm more capable, I can play cricket, I can become a success in this, but there is still an inner drive and inner emptiness and inner hollowness because I'm carrying this unhealed, unassimilated trauma of my mother. So which I'm then expressing in the form of drugs, in the form of addiction. Okay. So, and of course there are, again, I'm just giving you all one example, but there is a lot more there. Every therapy has a story there. And yeah, so that's pattern, outsource. So this is the outsourcing of what has been unassimilated, and then there is trauma in the system. So the system conscience basically creates entanglements. And in this way, we can say that it really doesn't care about the individuals. It will, in a way, sacrifice an individual for the completeness of the system, to make the system whole. It can sacrifice an individual. So you can say it takes into service individuals to behave in a way which is similar to the previous generation where something was not resolved, where the trauma was not resolved, was not acknowledged, or was not given a space. So the system conscience basically wants to bring back the system to wholeness. But of course, the way that it does it creates only trauma and patterns in the system. Clients come to us when they are in this space. So people need healing when they are in this space. This is where they realize that a part of them understands that I want to live my life differently. I want to do things differently. So there is something in them which is aware that this is not what I want. I want a different life. But there is another part which is drawn, which is driven by this subconscious drive to behave in a way which takes them away from their life goals, from their life dreams, from what they want to do in their life. So is this much sort of, is it clear or is there confusion? Then I would like to clarify if somebody has something that they would like to share or get clarified at this point before I go to the third part. So for example, if say there has been cheating at the unit conscience, it could be that somebody is carrying the guilt in the future generation and they may not allow themselves to be successful. So if the grandfather cheated someone of their in business, maybe the grandson, every time he makes a bit of profit, sees a loss in his business because there is an internal sense of, I want to atone, I need to atone. This he is not doing consciously. Remember, the system conscience is subconscious. So he will attract situations where there will be losses in a way to balance the imbalance created by the grandfather.
I have a comment, Ritu.
Yeah, Mudit?
Yeah. So it depends. A person can be selfish or altruistic. It need not depend on past trauma or situations. Someone is just more selfish and someone is more altruistic.
Yeah, that is how it shows up in our natures. Right? That is how it shows up. It is not something you choose, Mudit. It is something that is an inner drive. It is something because you belong to the system and since there is an imbalance in the system. So I'd like to give you all an image. Okay. So I want you to imagine a children's mobile. You know what we put on the cot of the children? That mobile which has many layers of little toys on it. So there is an upper layer, then there is a lower layer, and then there is a lower layer, and then there is something hanging below it, a children's mobile. So just imagine that children's mobile. Okay. Now imagine that from the topmost layer, I remove one element. I remove one element from this mobile. Okay. One piece, one toy, one element. What will happen to the entire mobile?
It will be imbalanced.
It will be imbalanced. Now there is one way I can balance it. What would that be? Other than bringing that piece back, because I have removed that piece, because I thought it was broken, it was not good enough, it did not belong, whatever. So what will the system conscience do to bring it back to balance? If something is missing from up here, it will remove something from down here to bring it back into balance. And that is when we are balancing this mobile. But it's really not balanced by doing that. Right? But this is what the system conscience does. It brings awareness to this event by creating a similar event or a similar situation over here, which reminds of this event. So if I remove this, in a way it brings the mobile back to balance, but it's not really completing it. So this is how the system conscience works. It removes something else from down. So somebody else feels excluded. Somebody else feels I don't have a place. Somebody else feels I'm not in the correct place. Who am I? I don't belong. I don't feel like I'm part of this family. I don't feel loved. I don't feel seen. I feel invisible. I feel like my dad prefers my older brother. Simple everyday things which we just discount and say, oh no, it's nothing. These are coming from the system and they have very deep roots. And all these feelings actually affect our life decisions. In order to be seen, We become helpers. We become people pleasers. We stop living our own life and start living a life in a way that we can be seen, we can be noticed. We no longer need to feel invisible. But that doesn't help because it's coming from the system. So somebody is overly altruistic, and that is an issue for the family because he's not taking care of his own needs and just into altruism. I would look into it. What did the family system, where did y'all take so much that now you have a need to just keep giving to balance it? Okay. So that is how the system conscience works, trying to balance, and this creates entanglements. And then, of course, we have something called the evolutionary force. So the evolutionary force is about the larger movements. It's what also Hellinger calls the spiritual conscience. So it is about when something reaches its destiny, whether on a larger level, on a global level, or whether on an individual level. So concepts which are no longer needed, concepts which no longer have a place in the society, which have become redundant. So where the evolutionary force is basically telling you to look at what is it that needs to come to an end, but you are not able to bring it to an end because maybe you don't feel ready, you feel insecure, you feel I'm not ready for this transformation, you don't know what is going to happen if you give this up. So very often people stay in abusive relationships, in violent relationships, because they don't know anything better. They don't know what else is there for them out there. So they keep themselves there. So that is at a personal level. You can go into the larger system and look at it. So for example, the COVID and how it has changed how we are doing things, right? Like we are all connecting on this online platform. Or how, for example, something like a telephone booth, something you would see at every street corner, which has now become redundant because we all have mobile phones. Nobody needs to go to a telephone booth to make calls. So the evolutionary force basically is about works at a much larger level. At an individual level as well, it tells you, it basically nudges you. It tells you something is coming to an end. It's an internal voice which tells you you need to move. You need to end this. You need to go, move on with your life. Now it's up to you whether you are able to listen to it or not. That's at a personal level. Then there is at a larger level, at a level of the, at a global level where things change, where there are transformations in the way we live our lives, in the way we do things, in the way we work. People are working online now. There's work from home. Nobody's going to offices anymore, right? Or 50% work from home, or things like that. So that is what the evolutionary force is about. That is about transformation. So once I have worked with the patterns, the trauma that I'm carrying from the system, then I'm able to look at things which need to come to an end in my life, in my relationship, in my workspace. People who are probably working in finance and want to give it up, they are bored and they want to become healers, but they are very insecure. Where will the money come from? Will I earn enough? Will I be able to sustain? Will I be able to, take care of my family with this income? So these are the movements of transformation. And once you have worked on these patterns and these traumas, you are in a place where you're making a decision coming from your own space and not from insecurities that you may be carrying from the system or from your traumas from childhood. Yeah, guys. So I've been speaking for over an hour, I think now. And this is everything I wanted to share about understanding family constellation. Of course, there are many more facets to it. There is the field, there are sentences, there are rituals, but it's too much to do all of that in this one little seminar. So I now would like to open up for any questions that you all have. And then I'll see if I feel the energy I could maybe put up some mini constellations, if just mini constellations, just diagnostics. So there may not be any healing that happens, but there may be some insights and understanding. I would also like to introduce you to how I work now with the lockdown and with people staying more at home and really not wanting to move. And we've been in this now for almost 2 years. So I work a lot with puppets. So in constellations, we work with representatives. So for people who are absolutely new, representatives, or rather, let's say people come together who have an issue they want to resolve, and they come together in a group. Each one has an issue they want to look into, and one person puts his issue first, and then they choose others from the group to represent various, maybe family members or abstract elements, who are then placed in a space which we call the field. And then these people who are representing these family members or the different elements, maybe somebody's looking for success or looking for partnerships or relationships or just peace, things like that. So if they are representing members of the family, they actually connect to the energy of the individual who they are representing, and they can even get insights about not only feelings, behaviors, but also physical. If the person had a physical ailment, if the person had a disability, they can get all those insights by just standing in the field, in the place as a representative of that particular family member of the client. So that is a little bit about the field. Just I would like to explain the field a little bit more. I think it's a very important part of constellation work. It's something that really, really fascinates me every single time that I set up a constellation and the information that comes out of the field. So fields are always present. Just because we are not aware of them doesn't mean they don't exist. So let's look at, for example, one way that we can be aware of the field is when you look at a magnet. A magnet has a magnetic field. You can't see the magnetic field, but we all know it. But if you put iron filings around a magnet, the iron filings will instantly get into a kind of a concentric circular form, which is the field, right? So the field becomes visible when you do something that makes it visible. Or if you look at, let's look at, for example, starlings, you know, the birds which travel in a group. I don't know if you all have seen it in the sky. You can see the starlings which all turn and move in complete tandem with each other. And they are changing directions, and it's almost like a dance they do in the sky. And it's not like they're consulting each other before turning, but they are all connected to the field of the force field of that group. So they are basically moving completely in connection with the field. Or let's look at the human body. When we are first conceived, we are just single cell creatures, and then the cells multiply. And every cell looks identical. And still each cell forms a different part, a different organ. Some become the heart, the liver, the kidney, the tissue, the bones, the muscles. So how do the cells know what do they have to become? Because they're all identical. So that information is kind of contained in the field of the system, of the physical body. You can say there's like a blueprint that is available, which every cell knows what it has to do and what it has to become. So we literally see the field in so many areas of our life. Almost, if you look, you can see it almost everywhere, very active. So the field is something that becomes active just even by our intention. So with constellations, I set up using the puppets. And this becomes the field of the client. So even though you are miles apart, you may be in another country, another continent, in another time zone, it doesn't matter. What you put up, what a client comes with, what my client comes to me with is only a small slice of a whole life and a whole system that is in existence since centuries. And then we put that issue up here in the field. And depending on how these puppets are placed by the client, we get insights into what is the entanglement that the client may be carrying, which is affecting his life. Okay, so I'll give you a simple, a little insight into this. So say, for example, what Bert Hellinger theorized because of doing so many hundreds of constellations is, I spoke about an order and a place, that each one has a place. And when people are in the right place, that's what brings harmony to the system. The system is in harmony when people are in the right place. So the family system has a sort of a, and this again is not an iron rule, it is not a prescription, it is just what brings peace and harmony. It could be different again in different systems. But in a system, if this is the man, this is the place of the woman. She stands to the left, so he stands to her right. Now, this would make sense in a traditional, let's go back to ancient times, to Stone Age, where the men always went out and they took care, they were the hunter-gatherers, and the women stayed at home and took care of the children. So this is the place of the child. So the mother becomes a nurturer. She can take care of the child, and the man becomes the provider and he goes out. So when a system, when people are placed like this in the system, this is a sort of an ideal way which brings a sense of harmony and peace in the system. Now, what happens is if my client, if this child is my client and he places himself here, I'm already aware that there is something not okay in the system because the child is placing himself above the father. So maybe he looks down on the father. Maybe he feels, oh, my father is stupid. He's always making mistakes. I'm so embarrassed because of my father's behavior. And he's looking down on his father. So then I could ask a question, how's your relationship? So this shows me the first step in the entanglement, that the father is not respected. And that could be coming from something else in the system, even behind the father. Maybe the father didn't respect his own father. So then we get the story of what happened. Okay. So this is how basically we work. So the field, the first activation of the field happens by how the client places the puppets in the system. So if I tell the client, pick up someone to represent your father, your mother, and you, and the client picks up father and say puts the mother here and puts himself here. So now I know that the mother is in between the father and the child. And the child has no access to his father. Now that could be because the father died, but it could also be because the father may be looking somewhere else, maybe involved in something else. Maybe the father is looking at his own father who died early. So his father died early. He was just an infant when he lost his father, and he's still carrying the grief and the pain. So he's unable to connect to his own son. So this is how something that happened, a grandfather died early and it affects the grandson. Yeah. So it affects the father-son relationship. It affects the child's own belief about himself. My father doesn't love me. I'm invisible to my father. He doesn't see me. And then that itself affects how I interact with my children as a father. Because what I didn't receive, I don't know how to give. So Okay, guys, so we have about 20 odd minutes. So if there are questions, I'm open to questions. If there is any clarification, if there is So here I have a question from Renu Gupta, which came long back. Is Renu's asking, my mother died when my son was born. So I was in grief and could not connect to my son. And still we can't connect. So it is belonging to the system. Yes, of course, Renu. So your son felt disconnected. He felt maybe a sense of not being seen, invisible. My mother doesn't love me. And then that's what he carries. So and then we also need to see maybe there is also someone else in the system. I don't know how your connection was to your mother or your mother's connection was to her own mother. So we could look into the system and see what else happened, and what else could you be carrying? And then we can work with that. Again, it depends on what is the issue that the client comes to you with, because it shows up in the client's life, the person's life, as something. Maybe like here, it is a disconnect with the son, which affects me. I feel guilt. I feel I was not good enough as a mother. I should do something about this, right? And everything that happens in the child's life, and being a mother myself, I start to blame myself for it. Oh, I didn't connect, so now he's not able to connect. So he can't form relationships. So he's not successful at work. So he's not able to do this. So he's not able to do that. So it's best that we first heal our own pain. So if I lost my mother and I was in grief, did I grieve enough? Was there something incomplete with my mother? How was my relationship? Did I grieve enough? Could I tell my mother, Mom, I love you? Or did I feel loved or seen by her? And is the grief unfulfilled because there was an incompletion there? So there can be so many levels or layers that we can look at. Yeah. So when I heal myself, that's the best way to heal my child. Because you remember, I just spoke about that other trauma that this child is carrying, the mother's unhealed trauma. So children carry it. But when you heal it, it gives them permission to let go. And this is subconscious because you're always connected. You are part of the same system. We belong to the same field. Something shifts in the field when I work on my trauma. It releases my child from carrying it. And they start feeling freer. And they turn around and start to connect with you on their own because they feel free. There's a change, there's a shift in that energy of connection that you have with them.
Can I ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
You gave the example of the grandmother having the secret business selling pickles and all that, right? So I wanted to know, the client will come to you with a limited knowledge of their own. I mean, it was a secret business, right? So that person might not know. Then how do you get to the exact core of the reason? It might be outside of that person's knowledge about their own family.
Absolutely. A lot of times people don't know. They don't know what happened. They have no idea. In fact, there are people, guys, please, Eman, can you mute yourself? Eman? Okay. So very often people have no idea. Sometimes they are not even connected to one part of the family at all. So there are people who have never met their mother's side of the family or never met their father's side of the family. So they don't know anything. They don't know any stories. But when we set up the constellation in the field, how they place the puppets, because I told you, the field is always active. When we set up the puppets in the field, it immediately starts showing you what happened in the system. So just by the placement, you can know what are the entanglements. Okay. And actually what happens is, because of how they place the puppets, you ask them certain questions and then they suddenly realize that, oh, I've heard something like this in my family. And then we are able to work. And even if they haven't, we are still able to work with it through sentences, through certain rituals in family constellation, which actually make the client feel like they have released something, they have let go of a burden that they've been carrying maybe from years, and they are able to see shifts in their life. So if you know stories, it's great. And I think one of the best things you can do for your family and your children is actually share story. What is sad is that the painful stories or the stories that we judge as shameful, we don't share with our family. We don't tell our children that somebody committed suicide, somebody died early, or there was an abortion before you, or you have 3 older siblings who are aborted. You are only number 4. Because somewhere we judge ourselves and we feel shame and we feel self-conscious and we feel, oh, it's too much for the child to know this. But it's not actually, it's relieving, it's freeing, because you're giving a place to that element, to that person, to that incident, to that trauma, which is what constellation work is about. It is about acknowledging what was not acknowledged, acknowledging the person's pain or loss of space or losing their position or losing their livelihood and the pain they went through, or they had to leave their country, they became refugees and the pain of that. So all of that is very important to share with our children. So it's important. Family stories are very, very important. So Babita, it comes in the field. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Ritu. This is Divya here.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, I just had a question regarding there's a regression therapy also, and then we have the inner child healing. I think that's a part of it, and this family constellation. I was just interested, and this is my first ever seminar I'm attending on this. So I wanted to know how different it is from the regression therapy, or it's the same.
So I don't know if you missed a little bit of the beginning, Divya.
Yeah.
I spoke a little bit about this. That so when you're talking about regression, I don't know if you're talking about inner child work or you're talking about past life regression. I don't know what you're talking about.
The both. I am not. Just I heard about it. I have no clear line of picture. I know a child healing, wherein they go into the past and heal the child and integrate with that.
Correct.
So I don't know if these two are the different therapies as such.
So with constellation, basically we work with the family system to which you belong. So every family system has many events that have happened in the system, right? There's so much history in each family, actually. There is so much history. And our system is centuries old. So it's literally impossible for you to trace your first ancestor. Like, where did it start? Who knows where it started? It's almost endless. If I were to put just 20 generations, can you guess how many people there will be? Just 20 generations of ancestors is about 1 to 1.5 million people. Okay, and that's a lot of people. 20 generations is 1 to 1.5 million people. So you can imagine how much may have happened in this system. Even if you just go up 3-4 generations, there are so many stories, so many things. So what, as I just showed you with this little example with the puppets, is that everything that's happening in our life, and that's what I have seen in every therapy that I have done. And now I work only with constellation work because I just feel it gives me the answers to give my client insights into every issue in their life. But that's me. I'm not saying that's the only thing available. Is just by knowing the first step of where am I carrying this from, my disconnection with my father, and then his disconnection with his father. So regression is talking about past life is one regression, and then the inner child work is the regression going to childhood. With constellation also, we do work with those parts of us which got split off. So in childhood, if I don't receive love from my father and I need that to survive, that part of me will split off, which will carry that pain, which will carry that belief that I am not loved. But the rest of me will continue. But this I am not loved will keep coming back up every time love comes into my life. And I will not be open to love because I have this split of part which believes I am not loved. So every time love comes into my life, this will come up. So with constellations, we work with the split of parts. That is what you call inner child, as well as we work with the family system. What am I carrying from the system which is unhealed, unresolved? Now, there is another viewpoint on this, that one could also say, and some therapists say, that it is possible that the you today could have been your own great grandmother who went through something, and that could be you in a past life. So I don't know. That is one possibility and one way of looking at it. But I'm not going down that road right now because I've not had a need to look at anything like that. So past life regression is about going to my own previous lives that I have lived, and not to say that I don't believe in past life. I used to do a lot of work with past life and we got fantastic results. But for me, the systemic work is just deeper. It gives more understanding of the system, and it gives me a better understanding of what I'm carrying, why I'm carrying it, and what happened in the family that made us who we are today. So if my brothers don't talk to me, why? If I feel left out, even though I'm sitting with my whole family, why? How is that happening? Why is that happening? What am I carrying from the system? Who am I entangled with? So that's sort of the difference. I don't know if I answered that, Divya, or did I go a little bit off track?
Yeah, no. I definitely got the idea. Yeah. So you're even in the this therapy. It's like we go into the trance and we do the same as in we do in the.
The idea of trance is something which seems to have been very much. People think that it's a state where you go into some other kind of a weird state, which is not your normal day-to-day state. You go into a trance in minutes, in seconds, literally. The
Yeah,
minute
I
you are
do
talking
have.
about your issue, you are already in a trance state because you are connected to something which is not current, which is not present, right? So the minute I set up a constellation and the client starts talking about the issue, they're already in a trance. So I don't need you to close your eyes, take deep breaths, go down 20 steps. You're in a trance in a second. The trance is for the trance of your issue. Okay? And then as you connect and you see it in the field, you just go in deeper, and then things start opening up. Because the field gives you so much information that you didn't know was connected to your issue. And then you see the connections. Okay, so my lack of success could be because my mother was too busy with my older sibling. I was born just within a year. My older sibling was always falling sick. Mom couldn't look at me. I feel a lack of connection, but I also understand there was an older sibling, so that's what it shows you. It shows you what else was present, what else was happening.
Okay, last couple of questions and I'm done. So the thing is, like, when someone should go for the family constellation and when someone should go for a regression therapy and inner child healing, like, is there any specific patterns? And also, like, when we talk about the karmic things and the spells or the curses on the family or such, we see the repeating patterns. So what do you see, what is advisable, which therapy, or if we go to the therapist and they do the proper things?
And as I just shared with you, I work purely with constellation work because I think it's more than enough for everything. Because it works with the split of parts, which you call inner child. Yeah, which are the parts which make you disconnected, which change your world view, which change how you look at the world. Because when you've had that trauma in childhood, how you take in information, how you perceive the world, and how you respond changes permanently. Because it is influenced by those split off parts of you who tell you, no, don't go there. You can't really be loved because you are not lovable, because your father didn't love you. So I can go deeper into the system with this work. So that's for me. People come to me only for constellations because that's what I work with now. But of course, if you feel that there is a past life I need to work with, then you should contact a past life regression therapist. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks
So
for your
there's
time.
no specific issue that only for this you can come. Everything. I worked with constellations with physical, emotional, success, marriage, partnership, children, grandparents, every issue, business, drug addictions, diseases and illnesses, cancers. We worked with everything. And we've always found connections to the system, which we have healed, and there have been changes in the client's life. So for me, it's my go-to modality. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That answers.
Can I ask something, please?
Yes, of course.
So, when you have multiple players, okay, I am one client, say,
I am?
and
Sorry.
I am one client, right? I
Yeah.
have issues in my family,
Yeah. Yeah.
multiple members, and going
Yeah.
across either across generation or across
Absolutely.
through a joint family, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
How and if there are certain things happening of which I have not been aware.
Yeah.
Okay, today I find myself in a predicament, or I find myself at crossroads, and I'm not sure how to deal with it. There's a lot of angst behind other people's actions. There's a lot of history there.
Absolutely.
How does the healing happen if the other people are either not willing, or you just don't know what's behind their story and what's
Correct.
behind their negative energies or
Yeah.
all that?
Yeah.
How does the healing happen for me in that case, in this
Correct.
scenario?
So this is something applicable to all healing modalities. What is the purpose of the healing? So the purpose of the healing is to give the client more control on his own life. Purpose of any healing. So I am no longer the person who's activated because the government is doing something that doesn't work for my business, or because the neighbor is playing the music loud and I can't sleep and I have an exam tomorrow, or because my mother doesn't look at me and that makes me feel not good enough, or because my father doesn't give me the importance I need, or he doesn't give me a sympathetic ear when I speak to him about my business problems. So the idea of every healing modality is to give more control to the client on his own life. So like I said, trauma changes your worldview. It changes how you receive and how you respond, because it rewires your brain when you have experienced trauma earlier on in life. And all our traumas have started early on in life. Every healing modality is about giving back control to the client in such a way that they are now not affected by this. They are able to, with constellation, what is an added bonus is I'm able to see that if my mother didn't love me, it's also because she didn't receive love from her mother. And why didn't she receive love from her mother? Because her father died when she was just born, and the mother, my grandmother, was grieving that. So not available for my mother. So my mother couldn't love me because she didn't receive it. In fact, she only saw grief. Okay, so now I have better control. So when my mother behaves in a way, I know where she's coming from. I'm less activated by her. So I have better control on my life, my responses. And that is what every healing modality is about. We can never change the world, but the only thing we can change is how we respond. And that response that we change, if you do it consciously, it's an effort. But when it comes from a space of understanding and healing, then it comes naturally. Your inner space changes. So your perspective changes, so your responses change.
Thanks.
Does that
So,
answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
can I ask another one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the examples that you have given have all been of behavioral things,
Yeah.
right? Suppose there is a physical issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not exactly a disease, but suppose some physical issue is there which is not healing.
Yeah.
It should not be so major, but it is simply not getting healed for months.
Yeah.
So if that is also connected with something else, how is the physical issue going to be healed? See, you can change your attitude, your way of looking. That is a separate thing. But in a physical healing, how would that happen? How would it work?
Correct. So we always look at what was happening in the system or around you at just around maybe few months before this physical issue manifested in your body. What was happening in your environment? What was happening in your space? Did something change? Did something shift? What happened? What did you experience that you did not process, that you could not process, that you didn't have the capacity to process, right? And so then again, that will lead you to the system, because the fact that you don't have the capacity means you feel helpless or you feel not capable of handling that. So again, it takes you to the system, right? So we work with it that way. Again, looking at what was happening around you, how did you feel? And then go back to when did you feel that before? And then again takes you into the system of the family. Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for attending. And I have a few things I would like to share with you all again before we close for the evening. One is that I have an upcoming workshop, and these are the details of that workshop. It's starting on the 10th of November. Understanding Family Constellation Work, Entanglements and Solution. This is a 5-day training in which I take you through the theory, and every day we practice constellations. And on the 5th day, you set up constellations. So you understand the whole theory and you come to a place where you are able to set up constellations for your clients or for people who you're working with using other modalities also. It gives you a very beautiful understanding about systems, about how they work, what affects us. So for me, constellation work is literally a way of living. I literally look at the 3 orders of belonging, of exchange, and of hierarchy, and it governs my life. It helps me in decision making. It helps me in doing what I consider to be the right thing because of the awareness of this information. So this is something that I'm offering. So if anybody is interested, I'm going to now share a screen with details of how you can connect with me. And that's right here. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm regularly posting a lot of little things. I post always stuff related to systems, and I'm always giving little tips and hints. So you all can follow me on Instagram. That's my website, Family Constellation, Family-Constellation. I'm also on LinkedIn. And if you still want to connect with me in some other way, that's my WhatsApp number. You can drop me a message. If you want updates on my future trainings, you can drop me a WhatsApp message and I'll add you to my mailing list. So these are the ways that you can connect with me.